Well, my friends, we've come out to the woods today to enjoy Mother Nature and this magnificent tree. Trees are truly wondrous, and underneath the protection of this great tree, we are going to practice our archery. Back in a minute. Okay, my friends, got a beautiful target down here, a big buffalo. They've got it set up at 21 yards. So we'll take a couple of shots and get warmed up. Indirect aiming. So we just aim off to the side, uh, probably about 8 inches with this bow. But it's a little trick that I read about in Jerry Hill's book. Okay, so one of the things that Jerry Hill told me when he called, and he was so generous with his knowledge, that he said that uh, Uncle Uncle Howard would make up about 100 arrows, and he'd say to Jerry, "Come on, let's go out the back," and they'd go out, and Howard would shoot those 100 arrows that he's made, and he would separate them into 3 piles, all the ones that were weak in one pile, and the ones that were heavy in another pile, and the ones that went straight in, he kept in the center pile. So he said, well, for the young guys learning they need a weaker arrow, give them the ones out of the weak pile. For the hunters, they want a heavy arrow, give them the ones out of the heavy pile. But for your own tournaments, you take the ones that go straight in. You see, he wasn't talking about spine and a spine machine or anything like that. They would make up 100 arrows and try them, and the ones that were true were true. So that's how Howard did it. Now, also, Horace Ford, he didn't talk about spining in his book either. What he would do, he said, was take an arrow and put the tip of it on a table and hold the end, and then he would just push on it, and he could tell if it was weak or stiff in that way. So anyhow, that's a couple of little tips, but that's what Jerry said that Uncle Howard did. I thought it was a great idea. Experimenting, usually it's better than charts in the end. And when you do that, and you get warmed up, you start getting some hits. As long as you use the indirect method, like Jerry says, like Howard says. Okay, back in a minute. Okay, my friends, we'll shoot at the same target. We just moved back to 25 yards. I'd say that I'm aiming about 1 foot to the right. I'm just going to leave just going to leave it. It's just too sweet. Listen, in Jerry's book, he describes some of the ways in which Howard was putting his feathers on. Now, when Howard was first doing archery, he was using wooden arrows. So what they did was take a little pin like you would have for clothing, holding clothing together in the store. And they would put a pin right up here, and then they would stretch out the arrow, offset it about 1/8 of an inch, and put a pin there. And then they would just take glue and pinch the tip of the glue so that it made a very narrow little line, and they ran the glue along each side, and that's how they would put on the feathers. Later on, Jerry said that they took a Spitzenberg jig, I think it's called Spitzenberg, and they used a straight jig, and he would offset the feathers. He tells people to experiment, to offset your feather 1/32 inch at the front and 1/32 at the back with a straight jig. And then if you can get your arrow to turn once in 10 yards, that's good, but if not, then you set it off a 1/16. So I read in Howard's book that he set his feathers off 1/8 of an inch. So that's what I do. I have an experiment. I simply put it on the center, offset it 1/8 of an inch, and glue it on. The other kinds of things that he's talking about is just the length of the arrow. Now, I'm going to get you to get the book. Just get the book and you'll find out these different lengths. But one that stands out in my mind is Howard's feathers were 5 15/16, not quite 6 inches. Why not 6 inches? These are 6 inches, but that's what he did, 5 15/16. But all those measurements are in the book, so get the book and check it out. And anyhow, that's what I had to say about that. And I just couldn't be bothered taking another shot, because it was just too neat, So I just left it like that. Anyhow, we'll be back and take a few more shots. Okay, guys, now we've moved back to 30 yards. At this distance, I have to aim at least a foot to the right. That's it again. I can't stand it when I do it. I'm not going to ruin my target. Anyhow, the idea here, when I'm looking at this target, is I've got my dominant eye. I told you this before, but look, if you move your head to the right so that you see double vision, that means that your weak eye is looking at the target. But I'll tell you, if your weak eye is looking at the target and you close it, the dominant is right on. So that's why you get double vision. Anyhow, when I get this, imagine a straight line from my eye to the target. But the arrow has been pushed on so that it's about a foot off to the side. So I'm seeing the straight line here, but I'm seeing here, and it's anchored right here, you see. So what I'm seeing is a wedge. It's like a little triangle. Try it out. Look at the target, get your angle when you're drawing back, and it's off on the side, and just imagine it like a little wedge, like a little triangle from here, not from out here where the center of the target is and the tip is. You're not measuring that. You're measuring the angle from here. Okay, so it's right in there, and when you get it right, it'll be on. Anyhow, that's a big deal. It's a triangle, it's a wedge, and if you look at it that way, you'll get your hits, and sometimes better than others. Well, didn't want to spoil my target. But that's the idea. From your eye to the target, and from your anchor, you judge the angle of the between the arrow and the target. That's the best I can tell you. Okay, back in a minute. Well, guys, it's starting to rain, so I think that's it for today. The big deal that I'd like to talk about today, though, was this idea of using your weak eye. It's more important than you realize. And you can line up with it very, very good. And when you are lined up that way so that you're seeing your target and you've pushed your arrow on, judge the angle from here to here. Not so much the distance from the tip to the center, but the angle. You can just see it. Anyhow, that's about it for me, and I hope you guys have a good week, and I hope you've enjoyed the little bit that we did get to do today before we got rained out. Anyhow, have fun. Talk to you later. Bye now.